All right, I am now joined by a very special guest, new Washington Nationals relief pitcher Evan Reifert. Evan, it's great to see you, man. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day here to hop on and talk a little ball. How's everything out there in Iowa?
Yeah, it's good, man. Yeah, the weather here is pretty crazy. So again, I'm spending most of my time inside training in there, and again, kind of getting anxious here, getting ready for spring training, getting down to Florida as soon as possible, really. So
Yeah. So when it's this point in the off season, like, are you checking the math? Or are you like, all right, there's this many days until pitchers and catchers? Are you already doing like logistical mental stuff, trying to figure out what that's going to look like?
yeah, a little bit. Obviously, kind of figuring out my days now, and I'm trying to go down a little bit early. So again, I can kind of step outside, kind of get used to throwing outside again, and again, getting to meet some new faces as well this spring. So I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, obviously, kind of calculating those days and figuring out bullpens and figuring out hopefully a couple live VPs before I go down, and yeah, just really ramping up and getting ready.
Is off-season training when you live in Iowa, is it all indoor? Do you ever go outside for that stuff? I mean, obviously when there's like that random warm day, but like what does baseball off-season look like in Iowa?
Yeah, typically it's all indoors. I mean, again, our weather's so sporadic and again, like it's supposed to be almost 50 here in like a couple days, but again, it's supposed to be back in like single digits again, a couple more days after that. So the weather here is pretty erratic. There usually isn't time to throw outside. And again, usually it's wide open too, being that there's not much in Iowa. So it's pretty windy on top of that too. So you get some pretty nasty wind chills and stuff like that. So it's not the most enjoyable winter weather at times, but yeah, so a lot of it's all indoors and again finding spaces now too. Again, I'm from small town Iowa here, so it's like I got to bounce around to some bigger cities for us here that whether it's a 40-minute drive, 20-minute drive. And then I'm actually lucky too with the high school I have back home here now. We actually have a new indoor facility that's only probably a handful of years old, so it's nice to kind of get to use that. And the school's very, very graceful to me, so it's awesome.
So you said that you needed to go eventually throw back outside. Is that because like you have to see how your pitches adjust with like wind and being out in the elements as opposed to like the controlled indoor stuff?
Yeah, it's different. Again, playing catch inside, it's like your ceilings are so, they're a lot lower than outside. Outside you can kind of get some air under it. You can really see what the ball is doing, whether it's tailing or it's cutting, different stuff like that. You get a lot better feedback throwing outside. And then again, throwing with cleats on, throwing, you know, cleats compared to turfs is a completely different feel. So, kind of getting the feel of that too. And again, throwing on indoor mounds is different than throwing on actual dirt and stuff like that. So kind of getting those feels back before spring training is always a really big plus to kind of get down there a little early. And like I said, throw outside and again, throwing with catch partner at times too, because I mean, again, you're limited in space. Some of the indoor facilities, my my facility at the high school that I throw at now is like again, we probably have about 90 feet of space there to throw into. And again, you kind of you make your way and you make your, make up your throwing program as you go and you kind of throw into some nets or some batting cages if you want to put a little bit of air under it. Um but again, that's where it's like kind of judging the distance too. So that's why it's another good reason to go outside as soon as possible, getting closer to spring training. That way you can kind of judge your distances a little bit better. It's not so much a guessing game of like, oh, I'm throwing into this net at this angle and kind of really feel it out there. It's a lot easier to kind of gauge that when you're outside. So
Yeah, I mean it's next to impossible to do long toss, which I imagine that like most guys are doing in the off season or like they have to for their arm. Like you can't really do that in the warehouse, right? Yeah.
yeah. So again, you kind of you modify it and you go and you do what you can. So a lot of the time it's just throwing into a net of some sort and again, just trying to gauge your way with that. So
I always hear that like when pitchers play catch with other pitchers, it's just like they're whipping the ball back as hard as they can at each other. Is that kind of the way it goes when you're playing catch with a fellow pitcher?
Uh, it can be. I mean, I try not to blow up my guys too bad, but it does kind of get to that point, especially like in season. It's like again, you're trying to get the best and most game like, feel, especially with all your pitches. So it's like, hey man, I gotta rip this. I'm trying to give you a heads up and a warning. And again, yeah, so there are times where you really do have to whip it, but Again, that's just more getting the feel for it. And again, I mean, practicing what you would do out there on the game mound. So
I think my favorite story was just like we had Josh Fleming on, and he was just like, I had to stop playing catch with Pete Fairbanks because he was like hurting my hand, and I was just scared for my life because he's like, I'm gonna try something new here, and it's like, no, please don't.
yeah, no, again, I've played catch with plenty of guys like that too. And again, I mean, Pete, he's throwing 100 miles an hour, so I don't blame Fleming at all for that. So again, those are scary guys to play catch with too. And again, with Pete's stuff too, it just being, outrageous outlier stuff. It's like, yeah, I don't want to catch that either.
Yeah, it's cool. I've had the opportunity to like learn a lot about like the Rays organization and like the way they operate about that kind of stuff. So I have some questions about that a little bit later, but I did want to kind of take it way back. Kind of like just like the way you kind of came into pro ball, college route, the whole thing. So I know that you were a year into JUCO when Texas came calling. For I think it was like the 30th round for the draft, and you passed on it and you went back to school. Were you surprised that after only a year at a small JUCO in Iowa, that like a Major League Baseball team was calling you up?
Yeah, no, I was. Again, I was young at that time. I was a freshman. Again, kind of had like a little bit of a velo spurt, I guess you could call it. Again, I was throwing like 90 or 91 out of high school. It was like touching that. I wasn't like sitting that, and then kind of getting to, really just dig into pitching and focusing solely on pitching my freshman year, and on. It was just like that velo ticked up, and I think I hit 96 my freshman year, and again, I would sit anywhere from like 91 to 93, and again had a couple outings where I was like 92, 96, and it just stuff like that. So the velo ticked up a bit. And that definitely caught some eyes, and it also helped too that I had, other guys on our team too that pro scouts were looking at. So it's like our coach did a great job of just being like, oh, hey, like you've got really good stuff. Like I'm gonna put you right behind this guy when there's scouts here, um, to pitch behind those guys. So it was a good, really kind of scouting opportunity for me, to get seen my freshman year. But yeah, like you said, it's like it was unusual that I got picked up there because again, I mean, went through the ups and downs of the season that I had, and yeah, I didn't think I did enough to get drafted. But again, the Rangers took a chance there and just like, hey, 30th round, we've got money for you if you want it. If not, then they're like, we understand, and keep doing you. You're gonna get there eventually. So.
Was that the case where it was like where like obviously he talked to you about that stuff? Was it like a pure stuff play? Were they intrigued by the velocity, even if the numbers weren't necessarily there? Is that kind of how it went?
I would say so. Yeah. It seemed like the scout that had talked to me after the draft had happened there, he's just like, hey, like, understand you're still working on some things. Like, we see the talent, we see the raw stuff. Like, we really like what we see, and we know that other pro teams are going to like that too. So yeah, it was just kind of one of those like, hey, like, you're doing the right things. Like, we know you're still working on some things and you're still ironing some things out, but, yeah, so the interest was there. And yeah, they could see the talent there too. So
It's got to make you feel good though. Like even if like obviously you ended up passing on that, but like did was there like a little bit of a confidence boost after that going into the next season? Like, oh, okay, yeah,
yeah, definitely. Again, I mean, I had a great like sophomore fall then too, and ended up committing to UNC then too. I had a really great, go there. So it's like it was definitely a big confidence boost too, and again helped kind of propel me. I was playing in a summer ball league that summer too when I did get drafted too. So I was like, wow, this is a lot. So it was
yeah.
kind of unreal at the time, and didn't feel quite, it was just like an unreal feeling. It's a real feeling. So
This always comes up with like guys getting drafted out of high school and just like their transition into pro ball, being 18 years old. You were kind of in that same kind of boat, right? You're like, were you 18, 19 when you got drafted the first time? Like, how do you think you would have done like mentally being that young going into pro ball? And are you glad that you ended up taking the route that you did, which is going back to school and being a little bit older?
yeah, like you said, I think I was probably like, yeah, 18, maybe. I might have been 19. I might have been 19. I'm young for my age and for my class, but yeah, I was probably 19. So it was young. And again, I think that was my whole purpose going back too. It was just like definitely the mental aspect of it. Physically, I knew I was getting there, and again, still waiting for my body to kind of mature a little bit more. But but yeah, it was more on the mental side of it's like, hey, like I had unfinished business to do with my JUCO. I'm like, hey, I want to keep going back, and I know I could do a little bit better. And like you said, just being a little bit older, kind of learning, pitching a little bit better. That was again my first year focusing on pitching was my freshman year, and I ended up getting drafted. So it was a lot all at once. But yeah, I think going back and again getting into pro ball now and seeing just a big difference, like you said, there's such a big um, difference in maturity just from the guys that you see in high school. And again, not to say that they can't get there. I played with Carson Williams this year, and he was a high school sign, and got he's incredible. Like he's so much fun to watch and so much fun to be around. Like you can tell, like over the years too, that I've been with the Rays, that he has made leaps every year of just the maturity gap, and he just keeps getting better and better each and every year. So I think there is a big gap, and again, some guys get there, some guys don't, and that's just how it is. But I'm glad I took the way I did, and again, going back to college was the best place for me there at the time. So
You said that that was the first time you had focused on pitching. What other positions had you played before that?
so again, I went to a small school in here in Iowa, so I played third base, and I played like perfect game like in the springtime because again we play spring ball for um, just for like scouting purposes and stuff like that. And then our high school season was in the summer for Iowa. So yeah, so I'd play a little bit of center. I'd play mainly third though. Third was what I played in high school, and again, I actually got maybe more honors playing third base than I did pitching in high school, which was unusual. But again, we play small school, so I raked for what I did, and I got to play 4 years there and it for varsity, so it was good. So it was awesome.
Just a tall, long third baseman. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like really, I just had to keep the ball in front of me. Had a great arm, and again, I could rifle that thing across the diamond. So it was just kind of really the place for me to be. I mean, even growing up too, I played, shortstop on some of my travel ball teams, and then I got to play a little bit more competitive travel ball. And there's like, oh, like we already have a really good shortstop, but they're like, you could play third. I'm like, okay.
It's
So it
close.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, I'm like, all right, sure, and went over there, and it was pretty easy transition. I felt like so. And again, I mean, I'm no stellar third baseman, but again, I kept it in front of me, and again, could make really good throws over there, so it was good.
What else can you ask for? Yeah. Also, like you said, outfield. Like how are the shagging skills still? Like, if could we see you in the outfield just one handed catching it?
It's I'll have my moments, all right. I think I'm a bit rusty now. I do enjoy a good power shag though, and just getting after it out there, um, but yeah, I try and hold back a little bit now. So I think again, some of that's getting to me now where it's like, all right, I do a lot of pitching now, and that's kind of what I'm focusing on. But yeah, I'll try and flash the leather out there every once in a while, and make some jumping catches or do something crazy. But yeah, just normal stuff though.
Nats Park BP before the game. We're gonna see you out there just laying out. Sports Center
Yeah.
top 10. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I can handle the layout there. I don't know. I don't know if I'll do that one, but I'll try and do something flash. I'll get some air up there or something.
Oh
So we'll
yeah.
do something.
Love that. So wait, small like JUCO in Iowa to UNC Chapel Hill, which is like this big college baseball powerhouse, ACC, whatever. Like, was that a big culture shock going from one to the other? Like, how did you kind of handle all of that?
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah, like you said, small JUCO in Iowa, and then going to UNC. I mean, it's definitely a bit of shock too. And again, I struggled in at UNC there, and again, didn't end up making it that full semester either. I got cut, and then I came back to the Midwest and ended up going to a Division II, Central Missouri, and went there to kind of play the rest of the year, which again was a great decision for me. I was struggling, and again, they're another kind of building block for me, kind of learning more about myself and how to handle myself. And again, it was kind of the best case scenario, but yeah, definitely shell shock, kind of going there, like you said, Power Five, baseball culture is just deep there. And it was awesome to kind of be there too and to get to play there for the brief time I did. But yeah, so again, ultimately I just couldn't handle it at the time. And but again, I learned my lesson there, and you know, here we are now. So
Yeah. So I love getting like I've had the coach's perspective on this where I had like Steve Murray, who was Matt Strom's JUCO coach on, and he had a quote that I wanted to get your take on. He said, "Other people's opinions of you really don't matter. It's what your opinion of yourself is." And you just mentioned like the when UNC didn't work out. I'm wondering like what that was like mentally for you, and also like did your opinion of yourself did it remain high in that time?
Yeah, no, it was really tough. Again, yeah, struggled mentally there. It was just like couldn't throw strikes. Was really struggling. They were kind of trying to tweak my mechanics here just because they're like, oh, you're not in the zone enough. Like we got to do this and that, and it just kind of it snowballed on me. And yeah, obviously I was really down on myself, and again, still pretty new to pitching for that there, and again, handling myself in those situations too, just kind of with the people I had around me, it was tough. But yeah, like you said though, it's like I think I did in that moment. I valued other people's opinion about me and what they thought about me. Um, so again, it was really tough. But again, I think leaving there though too and going back home and doing some things on my own, and I'm like, you know what? I'm actually doing things that are good for myself now. And it was kind of like, they kind of added like a little bit of an edge to myself, a little chip on my shoulder. When I was going to Central Missouri after that, because it's like I was throwing um I think by the end of the fall season at UNC, I was throwing like 90 like after I had been like, mid 90s at JUCO, they'd kind of knocked me back to like 90, and then I got home, and then I got back to like mid 90s, like sitting mid 90s again. I was like, oh yeah, like I got this again. So it's kind of get my swagger back a little bit there. So, um, but yeah, it's so true that it's like I think for anybody, it's like if you value what other people think of you, you're never gonna be as good as you can be. It's like if you really just evaluate yourself and you can really just bet on yourself. So
Got your groove back. Yeah, especially like in your role too, like as a relief pitcher, late innings. Like, was that so? That's kind of always been your. Have you ever been a starter? Or have you always been a relief pitcher?
yeah, so again, high school I did some starting, and again, that's kind of really kind of the best way to get scouted out of high school, I think, is just if you're a starter and you can kind of prove that you can pitch through again, tough situations, you can get, a lot of outs and stuff like that. It's a good sign. And again, I did a little bit of starting in college as well. It was kind of here and there though. Again, junior college, they wanted me to start just for like scouting purposes, like, hey, like, we want you to pitch at the beginning. You've got great stuff, like just showcase it and do your thing, man. Um, so yeah, it kind of went up and down. And actually getting into pro ball too is like until I signed with the Brewers, they're like they told me they're like, hey, you're just gonna be like a relief guy. And at the time I was like, dang, I kind of have like a really long routine, like kind of like a starting routine. So it took me a little bit to kind of just be like, okay, like I actually am like a relief pitcher. Like I kind of gotta modify uh, and get going like differently. So
Did you have more pitches?
um I've still mainly been a fastball slider guy my whole career. So I know coach in high school, I tried to throw like a changeup, and he's just like, dude, you have a good fastball and you have a good breaking ball. Like, don't throw anything else. So like I was kind of taught at like a young age that like, dude, just you've got two really good pitches, like just stick with those and get really good at those two pitches. So
Interesting. I wanted to ask about the slider because, like, I know that's like every time you're mentioned in like the articles and stuff that I read about you, it's just like 70 graded slider, Evan Reifert slider. I'm wondering, like, when was like the first time you realized like that pitch was like it for you?
yeah, again, I've known I've had a good slider, and again, I've gotten a ton of swing and miss on it, like from high school and from now on too. Like it's been, obviously like my go-to pitch. But yeah, I think really again getting into pro ball and like really starting to hone in on my off speed, like that's really when I kind of noticed I'm like, okay, this is kind of my good pitch. And again, in college too, I was getting scouted for it. They're like, hey, like you got a really good slider. But again, like my slider shape too has changed like from college to now. Like the shape is way different. And it's more consistent now than it ever was. Um, and again, obviously, yeah, it's been really, really stellar. So I'm okay with it now. And Yeah, but again, like I said, I think the Brewers really kind of honed in on it too, and they're just like, hey, like this is above average. We want you to throw this more often than not. And then again, I've taken that for my career here now and too, just kind of really working on that, throwing it for a strike and putting it out of the zone when I need to as well. So
Yeah, I'm sure you're like I have no problems being known as the slider guy when the slider like rocks that hard. Like that's so cool. Um, have you ever tried to add more like break to it to like make it a sweeper, or is that something? Am I way off with that? How do you make your slider a sweeper, or is a sweeper already a slider?
yeah, I mean, there's different categories of sliders. So yeah, I mean, the one that I throw is more like depthy. Like it looks more like a curveball than it is a slider. I think when a lot of people think slider, they think, yeah, it's moving more horizontally, where mine it just drops. Like it just falls off the table more often than not. So, um, yeah, I try to be as consistent as I can with it because again, I know the movement's really good and I get a ton of swing and miss with it. So it's like I don't want to change the profile of it too much. I just want to change my visuals with where I'm trying to throw it and where I'm trying to land it in the zone or out of the zone. So I'm really just looking at visuals and not trying to mess with the shape of it. Like I know the shape visually, like in my head, like before I throw it, it's like, all right, I can see it going at the catcher's face mask, and I know it's going to land like at his knee, or below his knee, and stuff like that. So like I kind of had that visual in my head already, and yeah, it's just where I need to start that pitch then. So,
Interesting. Do you have like variations of it? Do you have a fast and a slow one?
um, I mean, the ones that I really spike are kind of those are like the harder ones, but those are kind of the accidental ones. Um, Yeah, I mean, some of the get me overs are a little bit slower. I try and take a little bit off there if I'm really behind an account. And again, that's like my go-to pitch. And if I'm behind accounts, that's the pitch I'm most confident with. Um, so yeah, sometimes if I have to take a little bit off it, then I will. But I don't. I try not to do that as much as possible. Again, it's just going with the consistency factor of it. Um, it gets the best break when I'm throwing it, you know, 83 to 86. Like I'm trying to stay in that kind of range there. And if it gets a little slower than that or a little bit harder than that, it's like the movement's just a little bit off. So
Interesting. So I know you just said that like that's like the pitch you're most confident with. I know it's like I think you throw it the majority of the time, even not afraid to like bang it out several times in a row in an at bat. I'm wondering, do you enjoy a kind of like the mental chess match between the batter and the pitcher? Like, all right, I've thrown four in a row here. He probably thinks I'm gonna throw fastball, but guess what? I'm throwing another one. Like, do you enjoy that side of the game?
I do. I love it. Again, really, that's kind of the name of the game. Especially as a pitcher now, it's like I think it's not even about who the batter is. It's just like, hey, I've already got a game plan in my mind, and again, like I've got an idea of what I want to do going into it now, and it's just like, yeah, just kind of again going pitch to pitch with everything, and again, I know my slider is my best pitch, and it's like if I'm making him look silly with silly swings and stuff like that, it's like I'm gonna keep throwing it, until he can prove that he can hit it. It's like I'm just keep throwing it. And then yeah, like you said too, there's times where I'm just like, oh, like he's way out in front of a slider right now. I'll throw another one. He lays off it, and then throwing like a two seam or something up and in on him, like just to throw him off. It's like, hey, why not? Just kind of. It's almost like it's a little, like you said, it's a chess match. But really, honestly, the chess match is just against myself. So, and I really enjoy that. So,
I was gonna ask, like, because I know your fastball, it's still great. I think it doesn't get enough shine when people talk about you, because, like you said, it's mid to upper 90s. It's got some good stuff. Like, do you enjoy like when somebody you're throwing it over and over and over, like the slider, and then you just blow the heater by him? Like, is there a cooler feeling than that?
no, I was gonna say it's funny you say that too, because yeah, I can think of a time this last season where that happened, where it's like, oh, they know I'm gonna throw a slider here, but I'm gonna throw a heater above the zone and they're swinging right under it. Oh, I love that. Like I love the swing and miss. But yeah, like and it's nice too. I've got two different fastballs now this year, or the last like couple years now. I've got a four seam and a two seam, and again, I think having the variation of the two of them is really nice. Because again, I can throw them in different counts, and again, they just add to the arsenal, and again, just a different look for batters too. And again, if they're missing by, a couple inches, like, that's the difference with games at times, just a couple of inches. So that's it's perfect for keeping guys off balance and stuff like that. And I love it. Love that little bit. But yeah, it's awesome.
How much of your game plan is based off of like going like knowledge before the at bat starts of like how you think a guy is going to like attack you versus like what you see pitch to pitch and like reading like he's behind this one, he's out in front. Is it just a balance or are you kind of more one or the other?
Um, I'd say more your second option. Like I think going into the bet, like obviously like I'm watching the game and stuff like that. I'm seeing what hitters are doing. Each at bat, and it's just like, oh, this guy's hitting more fastballs, this guy's hitting more breaking balls. Like, what is this guy looking for at the plate? But then also too, I think the Rays do a great job teaching guys of just like, hey, like pitch to your strengths and like whatever your strengths are, like you're gonna beat that guy probably 7 times out of 10. And again, if you're really good, you're probably going to be him 8 or 9 times out of 10. So like just kind of having that mentality going into it, it's like, hey, I know I got to give breaking ball. Like if I can prove it in the zone early, it's like these guys don't stand a chance. So that's really kind of the mentality I go in with it. It's just like, hey, like no matter what this guy's doing at the plate, whether he's got, a couple nukes and, really hard hit balls or this guy's like 0 for 2 or 0 for 3 with 3 Ks or something like that. It's like the approach really doesn't change and of how I'm like attacking guys. It's like, hey, I'm just gonna pitch to my strengths and go from there.
So you've said that you've been a starter and a reliever. Is it easier being a reliever? Like we talked about, like the chess match, the pitch sequencing, because like you're not going to see that guy again that day. So like, are you pitching him differently, knowing that like he's just he's trying to get a read on my stuff, but he's only going to see me one time versus we are a starter. I potentially have to see this guy three more times today. Is there a difference on how you kind of game plan that?
Uh, I mean, I think I would attack him the same if I was a starter. Going to your question there. But again, like that's where I go to. It's like I've only got, 2, 3 pitches. Where again, a starter has, several pitches that they can choose from. So I think, the mindset of a starter is like I've got, say I've got 5 pitches. If I had 5 pitches to work with, yeah, I'd probably be a little bit more like, all right, I'm not gonna throw my changeup yet. I'm gonna save that for, innings like 4, 5, 6, like stuff like that. I feel like I would plan out differently, but it's like just because I only have the one breaking ball and I've got 2 variations of a fastball, like I think really just attacking with my best stuff and realizing that my breaking ball is good enough to, again, if I see that guy the same game or like in the same series, it's like, hey, I'm just, it's okay. Like he's still going to be off balance with it. Like I still have enough separation between all my pitches to, really make the batter uncomfortable. So,
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask about like control because like on days that like you don't have it, I'm wondering like how do you kind of work to correct that and like what usually causes those days that like is it just like your breaking balls not breaking the right way? Like what kind of happens on the days that don't go so great?
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different things. It could be a lot of different factors. Like, again, you could sleep like crap. You could go to the field one day and arms just fatigued, or again, it feels weird out of the hand. Like ball just doesn't feel great coming out of the hand. Like you just kind of have to make those adjustments on the fly, really. And again, I think the command can suffer at times where you're just inconsistent. But again, that's where it just goes being like, how can I practice as close to game like each and every day, or leading up to those games and making sure that my body and my mind are in like the best possible place. I think that's like the biggest thing. And again, that's the other thing too. It's like, especially only having a few pitches to work with too. It's like if I'm not landing one of them, it's like I've got to adjust on the fly too, and just be like, hey, I've still got to get outs here. Keeping that mindset the same. It's like, hey, I can still use this pitch. Later on, it might come back sometime in that same inning or that same outing, whatever the case is. Like you've kind of just got to keep that pedal down, just be like, hey, like I've got to get back in the zone some way, somehow here. And it's like, kind of again, going back to some of your, adjustments as you go on the fly. It's like, hey, I gotta make an adjustment here somehow. I gotta find a way. So
Is it hard too as a reliever? Like I've talked to some guys about this, just like the fact that you don't pitch, like you pitch so sporadically and like the numbers aspect, like sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. Like, is it hard? Is that a hard thing as a relief pitcher? Is there a mental block that you have to overcome knowing that like all right, if I give up one run in a third of an inning, like the ERA is not going to be pretty for a while or whatever. Like, is that something that like you've had to like work to get over? Because I feel like that's a hard, not a lot talked about part of the game.
Yeah, I think it's just how your perspective on it. It's how you look at it. Again, like you said, if you have such a smaller window for, that type of stat, and that's what you're really focusing on, like, yeah, it's going to be tougher to come back from those. But again, I think really, um, I think relieving is probably the best case scenario though, too, because again, the more frequently you get to pitch, the better opportunities you get to really kind of get into a groove. And at least that's kind of been my case. I think from the starting role, it's like if I have a really crappy start, I gotta wait. Again, college, it was like you had to wait a week. Um, where this, it's like, 5, 6 days now, with this. So, it's just a lot of time to think. I think with relieving though too, it's just like, oh, didn't have a great outing. I'm going to work on a couple things here, next couple of days, and I'm going to get back after it. And again, you just kind of rinse and repeat that cycle. And I think that's like kind of the beauty of relieving. It's like you just get so many more opportunities in a week or in, a series. I think that just kind of it's a blessing in that way too. And again, that's talking from a 1 to 2 inning guy. Like, so it's like I get it with like the long relievers too. It's a little different, uh, but that's just kind of my 2 cents on it.
I didn't even think about that. Also, college once a week didn't like that's got to be that's got to be terrible. Like, so if you're like the Friday
Hmm.
or Saturday night guy, and then just like, okay, it didn't have a great night. How do you just have to like sit there with that for a whole week?
Yep. Yeah. That was one of the most stressful times I think ever, was college. Yeah. Again, like I know, especially my sophomore year when I was more consistently starting then. Um, again, I started off great. I was kind of building up and, had came off a really good outing, and then it just like everything kind of hit the fan and I went straight downhill. And just couldn't get out of it. It's just like bad start, walked a bunch of guys, and again got pulled early, and then it just like, I got a week. I got a week now until I get back to it. Which again, like you're throwing like a bullpen here and there too, and it's just like, man, this is just tough. Where again, I think relieving it's great because it's like you don't have as much time to think about it. It's like, hey, I got to figure it out quick, and it's like if I don't, then it's like I'm just gonna keep burying myself in this hole here now. Um, so yeah, like I think like you really get a better sense of like knocking things off a lot quicker as a reliever than you do a starter. So,
Love that. I want to talk about this past season in the race system because pitching at Double A had a great season, sub 2 ERA. Obviously, what had got you noticed by the Nationals and taken in the Rule 5, which we'll ask about in a second. But I'm wondering, like, what at the Double A level did you notice about like the talent level? I think you said you had played with, I think he's like the number one prospect of baseball, Carson Williams for Tampa. Like, obviously, you're seeing other top prospects in these other teams. Like, what did you notice about the competition level at Double A, and how do you think? This is probably a bad question to ask, but like I feel like baseball and like major league teams will be calling guys up from Double A, so I feel like there's not that big of a talent discrepancy. But maybe you can just touch on the stuff that you've already seen in Montgomery.
yeah, no, I mean, Double A Montgomery was awesome. I mean, again, we had a great team. The Rays are a great organization. Like we just had a great level of talent there. And again, we played in a pretty difficult league too. Again, it wasn't a pushover. Like we played a lot of really good teams. A lot of good teams had, top 100 prospects on them. Like I feel like Double A was such a good experience for everyone that was there. Um, and like you said too, the talent level is phenomenal, really. I feel like you see a lot more top 100 prospects in Double A than you do even in Triple A. Um, just because again, it's like a lot of those guys in Triple A are, former vets or guys rehabbing, stuff like that, guys who are already off that list. So I feel like you get a lot of that, cream of the crop in Double A. It's a little bit younger than those guys in Triple A. But again, like the talent level's there and the experience is there too in Double A. So like it's really kind of that like best of both worlds, I would say.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, so like I said, getting to work with Carson, guys like that too, it just, again, get to watch their progress and again, getting to compete against guys like that type of caliber was awesome all year. So again, yeah, to post the numbers that I did, it was just really again staying on top of the little things and, just keeping my head down and just going after it. So
did you have any battles with guys that might be household names or top prospects, or maybe even gotten called up yet?
It's a great question. Um, I know the Birmingham team that we played, they had a bunch of guys get called up. I think it was more pitching prospects. Like they had like Drew Thorpe got called up from there. A couple others got called up from there too, pitching prospects that were in their like really good rotation they had. Trying to think who else we played. There was so many. There's a lot of people. Um, but yeah, I can't think of any like hitters specifically that I faced this year that were like guys that got called up. But again, there was a lot though. It was good. It was a good level to play at this year.
I love that. So obviously the Nats came calling Rule 5 draft this past December. Big time for you. Did you have any idea that like the Rule 5 was going to come up, that you were going to be taken? Like what was that period like?
Yeah, no, obviously I knew the Rule 5 was coming up. I was eligible last year. Again, coming off like a shoulder injury that year too, it was like, didn't have high hopes for the draft last year. I thought maybe, like my minor league numbers and stuff with like the fall league in 22, I was like, yeah, maybe I get taken last year, and then, nothing happened last year. And again, realizing too that the Rule 5 draft is such a small group of people. And it's like, again, my agent had told me that last year too. He's like, hey, like it's such a small margin of people that it's like for someone to get picked, like it's rare. Like it's not something you should really like bank on. So I was like, okay. And again, going into that, hearing that last year, and taking that into this year, it's like, all right, well, yeah, I'm just gonna do as good as I can, and show out and do what I can this year. And again, my agent kept talking about it throughout the season this year. And he's just like, hey, like just keep doing your thing. Teams are watching. You got to realize that. I didn't know that the Nats were interested in me when the time came. Um, but yeah, I knew the Rule 5 draft was coming up, and obviously I knew once the Rays didn't protect me and stuff like that, that again with the season that I had, my agent's like, hey, it's not guaranteed, but we have a good shot. So I was like, that's cool. I'm like, we're gonna be in a good spot either way. So that was kind of me going into the Rule 5.
It's so true about the Rule 5 draft because most teams don't make a selection in the major league portion anyway. I feel like the minor league portion is a little bit different, but yeah, like there'll be like, all right, we're this team, we're so good, we don't have any open spots, pass, which is so funny to me that like you could just do that. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously like with the season, you just had a double A. Yeah, I'm sure. So when the Nats did call, what did you know anything about the organization before this? Had you pitched against like their affiliates? Like what was kind of like your knowledge of the team before all of this?
Not much, really. Again, yeah, I hadn't looked into their team that much. Again, didn't know too much about them. Again, didn't know that they were interested. It was really kind of a complete flip for me when I heard my name get called by them. I'm like, all right, that's awesome. And obviously, yeah, once they kind of talked to me a little bit, and I started to dig into it now too of just who they got and personnel and stuff like that. It's like, okay, like yeah, that makes sense. And um, but yeah, I had no idea though.
It's you mentioned personnel, big Nats guy. It's a very young and up and coming team, but it's an exciting bunch. I'm wondering if you're kind of had the same feelings when you started going through everything, and just like how excited are you to like potentially carve out a role here on a great Nats squad?
Yeah, no, I'm extremely excited. Again, like you said, it's a completely, very young, very new team. And again, I think I'm going to fit that mold really, really well. So again, my first impressions with the Nats is just like, all right, I'm going to fit this mold well. I'm going to, make an impact with this team, and it's going to be awesome. Like again, like you said, the age is very similar to mine, and it's like very young, very youthful. So it's like take advantage of that, and again, have a great time while we're doing it. So.
Have you talked to any of like the pitching coaches? Have you met Sean Doolittle yet? Have you had those conversations yet?
Not yet. Again, that's why I'm hoping to go down a little early here, and then hopefully I'll get to kind of cross that bridge there once I get down there. So
I'm excited for you to get to work in that lab, man. You're gonna love a high fastball. You're like
yeah,
that's just the way I've watched Sean Doolittle take these young guys like DJ Hers and Mitchell Parker, and they're just loading the top of the zone up with great success. So, very excited for you to get to work with this guys, man. It's so much fun. Um, I had a couple last questions for you. So the Nationals, the bullpen, they have this thing. It doesn't get used a lot. They have a bullpen golf cart. It gets used like once a year. I don't know why it doesn't get more play. I was wondering if, obviously a lot has to go right here, but like if we could just get like a soft commit for you to use it at least once. I'm curious what your thoughts were about that.
Are we saying in game or are we talking?
Yeah,
Okay. I mean, again, yeah, I think a lot has to happen between now and then
right.
for that to happen. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, coin flip. I'll give you a coin
Okay.
flip. 50-50 on that one.
Right. Yeah, it's January, and there
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
lots going to happen between now and the summertime. But like hypothetically, bullpen doors open, your song's playing. Now pitching Evan Reifert, and it's just you get in the golf cart instead of taking the run. I think you're gonna love it. Like, don't knock it, man.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't want to. I don't want to yet. But again, I feel like too. Again, before I get a couple, couple outings under my belt
Yeah.
first, I think I'm gonna need that run out there. I feel like I need that adrenaline to kind of, get pumping there with that run to start. So
Okay. Yeah, I guess it would be a 180 to just have like a quiet, relaxing like spin around the track instead. So I guess that would be a little bit different than what you have been doing.
yeah, so a little different, a little different. So again, like we said, this wouldn't be an early season type thing.
Sure.
Again, maybe closer to end of the season if we're really feeling it there. So we'll
Okay.
see.
I love that. I that's more than I could ask for, man. Because it's just they, regardless if a pitcher like gets in or not, the guy still has to drive around, and it's the saddest thing that just this poor guy has to drive this baseball shaped golf cart around with nobody in it. So I'm looking out for whoever that is, and I also think it would be funny. So we got a couple different angles for playing.
No,
Um,
that's awesome. I get it. I get it, man. That'd be sweet. So
okay. When the bullpen door does open, though, do you have a walkout song already? And like, what's kind of the vibe you go for?
I do have a walkout song I go for. I guess I'll let it be a surprise. If you go opening day, I'll hope you'll get to see it then. Is that fair enough?
A
We'll keep it
hundred
a secret
percent.
till then. So,
Yep.
but
I
yeah, I
I
mean,
think yeah.
I'll tell you, like, I'll give you like a little bit insight, but like, I don't want to give it away completely either. It's like it's not like heavy metal, nothing like that, and it's not like super slow either. But it's got a little songs got a little swagger to it. So again, it gets me pumped up here. So, um, but yeah, nothing too complicated, nothing too fancy though either. It's not gonna like blow your socks off, I'll tell you that. But again, it'll be a good vibe though.
I love it. Something for Nats fans to look forward to when they hear your name called. This is cool though. But like, I feel like Iowa it's not country or is it country?
Yeah, I mean, you could say it's country. I would say
Okay.
that. So again, it's open field, cornfields. So
Yep.
I mean, you could say it is. You could say it is country. So
I got the vibe. I think people here are gonna like it, whatever it is. Um, so I asked you this before, but just like knowledge of DC, I think you had said you've been there once before. Like, are you excited for, if nothing else, just like be a part, like explore the city, get to know like the area around it, and like, what are you most excited about when it comes to the city of DC?
yeah, well, I mean, again, I think first and foremost, probably the baseball aspect of it. Getting excited just to kind of, get to be in the baseball scene. And yeah, just getting to explore that. I think that's going to be awesome and get to know the fan base. I think that's exciting to me. Those things are probably the most exciting to me. But yeah, obviously too, um, you know, just all the history there too is going to be awesome. And again, I've done a little bit of digging with that so far, but not too much yet. But yeah, I think I'm just looking forward to seeing the area. And again, I've been there once, and I don't remember it too much. Again, it's been quite a while since I've been there, so I'm really looking forward to just kind of seeing what it has to offer. And again, yeah, just kind of going from there, taking it bit by bit. So.
It is like the quintessential, like every school like field trip has taken a trip to DC at some point. It's just like you go to the Smithsonian, the National Mall, and all that. So like if it's been one time and it's been a little bit, I'm guessing that probably was what was going on.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So,
Yep.
yeah, I was gonna say those were probably structured into what we had. So,
Yep. Oh man, it's I can't wait. It's gonna be so much fun. Couple last ones for you. Like outside of baseball, Like, do you have any hobbies, interests? Like, what kind of fills your time up off of the diamond?
Yeah, no, I like to fish. Again, when I'm back home here in Iowa, I fish a ton. Especially early in the off season. It's like, hey, no more baseball. Let's just kind of let's go out, let's go fish. And again, I don't fish much in season just because again, with the minor league schedule, it's like you're playing 6 days a week. You got your one off day. Um, it's kind of I feel like it's kind of hard to maneuver around that. Um, so I felt like we always kept our off days as like our golf days. So that's again another hobby we do. So um, yeah, it's I would say my predominant hobbies are fishing and golfing. So I fish a ton back home here, whether it's I live pretty close to the Mississippi River. We're probably like 30 minutes away from it. So um, sometimes I'll go down there and I'll fish, and then otherwise we've got some like lakes and ponds that are nearby too, and I'll just go, hang out, catch some bass around there. So
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm from a town of 1,000 people in Maryland, so like you're just speaking everything that like I would do. So that's so cool.
yeah.
Um, I love that. All right, my last question for you, and this has been awesome. Has there been a piece of advice that's really like resonated with you that you've received? Is there like something you've kind of taken with you throughout your baseball journey?
Yeah. I again kind of go into the mental aspect of things. When I got signed by the Brewers, getting to kind of work with their sports psychologist there, he was kind of a big turning point for me, kind of understanding how big the mental aspect of the game was, and again, kind of how you can maneuver through that as well. Um, he had told me a quote too, when we were talking about thoughts. And I was describing a thought to him the one day, and he's just like, "Hey, um, you ever thought about your thought is just a thought, and that's all it has to be. Like you don't have to pay attention to, you don't have to read into that thought. Like you can read into it just as much and give it as much power or less power than it needs to be." And that was probably the biggest bit that I've learned really, and that's really helped me, in baseball and then also in life too, is that a thought is just a thought, and you can put as much meaning as you want to it. So
I love that, man. The mental side of the game is something we talk a ton about. It doesn't get enough publicity. Like it's something that all these guys go through, like yourself. So that's great advice. I feel like that applies to everything, like you said, not just on the baseball diamond. So um, man, this has been awesome. I'm so excited. Like can't wait for you to obviously I can't wait to see what happens in spring training too. I'll obviously there's gonna be a big, couple months for you there. And then obviously when DC baseball rolls around, it's gonna be so much fun. So I'm rooting for you, man. I'm an Evan Reifert guy from here on out. So really, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate it.
yeah, I appreciate it, man, too. It's awesome. So it's a great conversation.